Hey, hey, hey. Time for another out of this world story from our space. Ex-wife and affair partner ambushed by shooter. Me, 25 male and 24 female, divorced over her cheating with random guy. She moved in with them and took my 6-year-old with her a few months later. My son tells me her affair partner touched him somewhere inexcusable, and I immediately moved him to his grandparents against my ex's wishes, who seems to not even believe my son, but actually seems angry with him over him revealing what happened. Long story short, I hear from my ex's mom that her and her affair partner were ambushed by a gunman in a parking lot, with the affair partner dying on scene, and the ex is currently in the ICU with gun wounds to the chest and neck, and is suspected to survive. Am I evil for not feeling sorry for them or not regretting it happened? The only good news is now my son is with me full time, but is devastated over his mother even though she let him be molested. Should I explain to a child his mother doesn't love him? He's only 6. Or should I just wait until he's older and show him the police report, etc., and record my son's confession to show him when he's older? You can't go to the hospital because of COVID to visit her, as my ex's mom pressured me to. Just need advice on what to do ever since all this happened. My moral compass is off and I feel like I caused my son nothing but pain. Let's get some comments on this outrageous story. Brazen Corey starts us off. Do not tell your son his mother didn't love him. Do not burden your 6-year-old like that. His mother possibly dying is bad enough. You are not evil for your feelings. She did not protect her own son. I understand your anger. I would be too. Don't let anger cloud your son's emotional well-being. Being told your mother doesn't love you is something you'll live with forever. That's a scar that won't go away. Later, you can say she did not protect him against his abuser, and that you are very sorry that you chose the wrong partner to be the mother of your future child, your son. That he deserved better, as she was unfortunately not very good at being his mom. She made very bad choices in her life. You do not want him to feel he's not good enough, or that it's his fault somehow. Place the blame where it lies. Bad luck of having a crappy mother. That you love him and name all the people who do. That even though she failed to protect him, you understand how sad he must be about his mom. Be his rock. Next comment comes from Straight Goods Dirty. Tell her mother that she is not your responsibility, and the fact that she allowed that piece of crap to touch your son, she will not have contact with him until she has done the work necessary by seeking therapy. Apex Randy says, damn, if she gonna be disabled, then you have to take care of her. OP's response, not happening. I became a better man after having my son at a young age to make sure he's safe and has a great life. The very thing I wanted him to never have to deal with happened because my ex wanted to be selfish and a loose woman, and I can never forgive her. I didn't even want to take my son to her at the hospital. COVID saved me 100%. Next dot comes from No Obligation 7077. You did well. What happened to your son was not your fault. It was his mother's fault. You just continue being a good father. Little Law 3996 says, gun wounds to the chest and neck. I can't imagine the extent of the damage be like. How serious are the complications? But just a piece of advice. You don't have to be there for her as the ex-husband, but just look at her as the mother of your son. That's all that matters. The OP responds, I'm not sure of the complications exactly, but ex-mother-in-law says she's alert and has little head movement for obvious reasons. This all took place maybe a week ago. Just a detail I didn't add. Apparently, the affair partner was at close range from what my mother-in-law has told me. He was shot while behind the wheel before even pulling off, obviously in the head or jaw, and my ex in her chest and side of the neck, as the shooter probably didn't have a good shot at her. My mother-in-law had to pay for a new car interior and a biohazard service to clean the vehicle. I don't know how many shots were fired, but he left teeth in the center console, and the shooter must have just kept shooting at my ex once the affair partner was down. I don't know how for sure, as I wasn't there, but I've seen many crime scenes and have a pretty good guess. Mr. Niz has the big question. Why did the affair partner get shot? Was he involved in a criminal activity? OP's response, I have no idea if he's involved in criminal activity. He could be a drug dealer, but I know for a fact that he's a piece of crap and has a really big mouth, and wouldn't be surprised him having enemies, especially with him being a child molester, as what he did definitely got around my station. And if anyone doesn't know, firefighters don't work for just one department, especially in big cities. It's common for firemen to work at 3 different stations. It has to do with hours, so I know what happened is definitely out in the grapevine. Moving on to the next story. Husband wanted a divorce but ended up exposing himself instead. If you'd like a fact-filled story, enjoy. I feel like I'm in the minority with my husband and his cheating. He has never asked for a second chance, never apologized, really never looked back. I will preface that I have no reason to think my husband had ever cheated before. I'm a little over 3 months from D-Day. My soon-to-be ex-husband, male 36, and I, female 32, have been together 14 years, married for 9 of them. Met in college, struggled financially together in the early years, and finally bought our first home, a condo at the beach, last year. We have no children. I've been going through some medical problems for 2.5 years, probably endometriosis. This did put a damper on our sex life, only a handful of times in the past year due to extreme pain. I always thanked him for being so patient with me while this was going on. And he would say, "Guys can take care of themselves. I just want you better." COVID hindered getting into doctors, and finally this year I was able to start the process of trying to get this diagnosed and resolved. I thought we had a wonderful, special relationship, truly best friends. He has a good paying job, working up over the years. I just have a little online job and an annual contract gig with his employer, so he was definitely the breadwinner. I never suspected anything was wrong. My husband seemed a little more tired maybe this year, but still always telling me he loved me, planning things together, nothing out of the norm. Now, let me introduce the other woman. Female 28. She was hired in his department 3 years ago. At first, he always lamented how annoying she was and not a hard worker. The 3 of us have similar degrees, so I was a little jealous of her getting that job so easily. My husband is a bit of a shy guy, a computer gamer, and very intelligent. She is more of the extrovert type, enjoys drinking, going out, and is an active member of her church. When D-Day happened, he had been working 3 weeks solid, weekends too. He had given some early morning COVID test excuse to spend 2 of those nights at his boss's home, where we lived 40 minutes from work. Every other night during this time were very late work hours, sometimes home around 1 a.m. Looking back, I now believe he was out having dinner, etc., with her some of those nights. The very end of May, I found extra clothing in his work bag. He gives the excuse of having a wrap party with people out for work. It seemed off, and I didn't believe him. After I listened to my gut, I told him I was going to drive to my parents for a week, 1,000 miles away. He didn't really fight me on it. Red flag. I decided to turn around halfway there and call him. Again, he doesn't sound overly excited. I can tell he is kind of faking wanting me home. He tells me he has to call the friends to tell them he won't be coming to dinner after all. Weeks later, I see on his phone records the friend he called was the other woman. He called her off and on, all that night until I got home. When I arrive home, it is awkward and he goes to bed. I decided to check his phone and find an Uber receipt from one of the nights he was supposed to be at his boss's home. It shows he stayed at the other woman's house and returned to work around 11 a.m. the next day. So he obviously lied about early morning COVID testing and must have left his car at work. It was one of those, "this can't be real" moments. I was shaking, but I woke him up and confronted him with this information. He let out a big sigh, as if caught, and then says, "I didn't tell you because I knew you would misunderstand." "Sure," I said. "I thought you couldn't stand her." He replied, "I guess she grew on me." I will never forget those words. We sat up all night talking, arguing with me crying for most of it. By morning, he pretty much had me convinced it was nothing, and he had been there instead of his boss's home because they had all drank too much after work. The next day when he was at work, I demanded her phone number, but he reluctantly gave it to me, warning he was afraid she would get him fired over some misunderstanding. Another red flag. I text her. She tells me she thought I knew he had spent the night and just laughed off any of my concerns, saying that don't even talk about anything personal ever. She claims he just gets ragged on for not going out enough with work people. This is followed by 2 days of what I would call awkwardness from him. I knew something is wrong and I finally beg him to tell me. He says he doesn't really feel love for me anymore. He says he doesn't know what is wrong with him and he thinks he needs to be alone for a little bit. This was 4 days before his 36th birthday, so I kept thinking, is he on the insanely low end of the midlife crisis age range? I had purchased baseball tickets for his birthday. He seemed so excited about it a few days earlier. This is all out of left field, and he probably still being in shock, I tell him, okay, I will go home to my parents for a little bit. We parted with everything very open-ended. I left everything in my home, except some important paperwork and some of my clothes. My mother-in-law, God bless her, even convinced me to leave more than I had originally planned. She said, "Don't make it easy for him to not think about you while you're away." He pretty much ghosted me the minute I left. No phone calls, not even on his birthday. I got a few texts out of him, but that was all. He was playing the "I'm alone taking care of myself" BS. That I mentioned one day prior to D-Day, I had had a biopsy taken and was still awaiting those results. He didn't even call to check on that. He had been so loving and supportive through my medical visits, and now he didn't even want to talk to me. Finally, a few days after his birthday, I begged him to just tell me what he wanted. Before I had left, I said, "If you have something serious to tell me, you better do it now in person and not when I'm 1,000 miles away at my parents' house." So what does he do? He ends our marriage over the phone. He said it was over and wanted a divorce. Just like that, 14 years, the man I had been with since I was 18, left with one cowardly phone call. I know my husband. If he was saying these things, he meant it. I begged for separation, though. I begged for marriage counseling. At this point, I still don't think it was an affair and thought I was really struggling with something. A few days later, I checked his phone records and saw that he had been speaking with her off and on all night on D-Day. I knew I had to go back to my home and find the truth. In mid-June, I drove 1,000 miles in one day and didn't tell him I was coming back. As I went through the city, on my way to the beach town we lived in, I decided to drive past other woman's house now that I knew the address. Wouldn't you know it, his car was there. It was about 1:30 a.m. I felt sick. I cried and drove to our condo knowing you wouldn't be there. What I saw was so hurtful. He had taken down all our photos, had all new boxers, new clothes, more alcohol, etc. The sheets were off the bed. I try not to think that they were probably together in our bed. And his wedding ring was in his nightstand. This is only about a week or so after him telling me he wanted a divorce. I spent the night in a hotel and the next evening confronted him when I saw our lights on and knew he was home. He passed out drunk on a sofa, sand everywhere, beach condo, and was completely shocked to see me. I see 3 missed calls from her on his locked phone. Apparently, I missed her by only an hour or two. How I wish I had known she was there earlier. To have been able to confront her in person and throw her out of my home would have felt good. As he sobered up by morning, he was able to lie again and said she and a friend had been there, not just the two of them. There was a new box of unopened condoms in the nightstand. He had the most pathetic excuse. I bought them as a joke with myself. Okay, I did make one big mistake that day. I slept with him one last time. He made it clear that this would change nothing, but I was hoping as a Hail Mary, maybe he would realize what he had been missing. Instead, he said the most hurtful thing a woman can probably hear. He said, pretty much directly afterwards, "If you get pregnant, this will ruin everything." He treated me like I was the other woman, like he had just cheated with me, his wife. It was awful. The following weeks were a blur. I found a lawyer after he suggested filing divorce paperwork ourselves to save money. It was all too fast. Just a few weeks ago, he was saying how much he loves me, and now he was saying, "Hey, I will take all the debt, maybe $30K worth, if you sign the condo over to me." Our property was worth more than $225K. Why do they all think we're stupid? He pretty much moved out of the condo at this point, staying with friends and his parents. I got a private investigator and a tracker for the car. I put a security camera in the home. I left for a day and did catch him FaceTiming her a lot. Remember, he is a shy guy. He doesn't FaceTime anyone. He lied to her in one video clip saying, "Oh, she didn't leave any clean towels for me when I left, so sorry about the loud washer." What? Such a weird, pathetic lie to get sympathy from. Soon after, via the tracker, I see he had been spending every night at the other woman's house, sans a few at his parents'. The PI got some footage of them leaving her house together, in our car, him teasing her and smiling like an idiot the entire time. When I confronted him with the tracker information, he lied through his teeth saying, "I've stayed with lots of friends." I said, "Do you want me to show you the proof?" He got angry and walked away. Don't get me wrong, I knew after the final time sleeping together it was over. I did all this investigating because I needed to know why my marriage was really ending. Not his reason for, "Oh, I just no longer love you." I knew this man, and the proof of the other woman, as hurtful as it was, made so much more sense. He had transferred his love from me to her. The few times he would talk to me and come over to get some of his things, he was so cruel and combative. He would stare at me with those shark eyes, like no one was in there, a completely disconnected person. Always leaving quickly and avoiding me and any questions. He was annoyed by my crying, just completely heartless. So unlike the man I knew and loved, he even came in filming me with his phone a few times, his idiotic police officer brother having told him he needed to protect himself. I can honestly say I am not a violent person at all. So the only thing he got on camera was me crying over him doing such a hurtful thing to the woman he knew for 14 years. He got in my face a few times, very uncharacteristic of him, but I knew even then he was baiting me, hoping I'd give him a reason to get a restraining order or something along those lines. I got a Discord chat with a friend of his I knew a little. He completely thrown me under the bus. It was heartbreaking. He called me manipulative, possessive, lazy, Said that I never wanted kids and never wanted to work. Said I would always put up a fight if he wanted to go out. Said he had been putting on a good face because he felt he owed it to me, that he wanted to start a new life before it was too late. I couldn't believe this. None of this was true. This is a shy computer gamer who never wanted to go out. I learned this is typical of cheaters to change the narrative. But even now it hurts to know he either convinced himself of these things or is desperate to look like a good guy. I sent the other woman a voicemail and an email. Nothing hostile, just laying out the facts. I'd even met her a few times while doing contract work for their employer. I'd had a drink with her. My husband warned me if I ever contacted his coworker, as he calls her, and if that isn't a mental block, I don't know what is. Again, that she would call the cops on me. It was more hurtful than you can imagine. Here, your husband defending the other woman from me, his wife. His wife who had done nothing wrong except refusing to lay down and die, not making his getaway easy, and not letting him screw me over with a lawyer-free divorce. I was able to sell her condo in only a few weeks. All cash offers are great, and we each got a little bit of money after owning it for all of 11 months. As soon as it sold, I had to move back to my parents' home for the time being. We are not in agreement on the divorce finances and will probably end up contested, which neither of us can afford. He still denies he is having an affair. I point out he is cheating right now. Just because you told me you want a divorce does not mean you're a single man. He ignores comments like that. Pretty much he ignores everything unless it's business. I am solely getting better at no contact. Other than business, he is full no contact. It is so very, very hurtful. I was under the impression we were truly best friends, that we had something special. We did everything together, the only man I had ever been with, and the same for him with me. Now I'm trying to fit in so many medical tests and procedures before I lose my insurance, praying they can finally figure out a diagnosis. And of course, I get to add an STD test to the list. The other woman is a big-time Jesus cheater. I am religious, my husband is not. She has been able to get him to start attending her church. A few weeks ago, a welcome package from said church was forwarded to my parents' home. What an idiot. I now knew the church's name, contacted the pastor, and quickly explained my situation and concerns. I expressed how I felt my husband would benefit from a pastor's counseling. The other woman, trying to bring him to Christ, maybe just to atone for her own sins, did not sit well with me. The day the pastor contacted him, I got 20 missed calls and a very angry voicemail from my husband. He claimed he went to her church alone and on his own. I had ruined the only good thing in his life, etc. I would be happy for him if he finally found some religion, but I can't believe how he lies about things like this. He was most likely just upset that she had been outed as a homewrecker in her church, where she was very active and had probably been crying to him all day. I know statistically the relationship between the wayward spouse and affair partner doesn't last, but I also know my husband wouldn't throw his entire life away if he wasn't certain. He lived with her for over 2 months until he recently got an apartment about 10 minutes from her home. This is most likely to aid in the false narrative that the relationship didn't start until after we got divorced. She is never married and pushing 30. They have the same job and some common interests. She is a flirt. I've seen it with my own eyes. I think she had her eye on him for the beginning, and when she detected unhappiness in my husband, he was weak and she was there waiting. Like most betrayed spouses, I think please anyone but the one he left me for. But I am also trying to mentally prepare myself for likely marriage between them. I lost my best friends, my husband, my home, my security, my trust, and all the dreams I had for our life together. I hope I can move on from this someday. 32 feels so very old when your health is off and you spent your entire adult life with one person who's now gone forever. It really is like death. Despite all the horrible things he has done, I am still struggling with feeling love for him. I would never take him back. Infidelity is a deal breaker for me, but I'm still fighting that cognitive dissonance hard. First response comes from Swan Song Blue. Sorry, OP, but I think that your husband has mentally and emotionally checked out of your marriage already. This affair is just him being disingenuous and bone freaking idle, enough to not wait until he had actually left the comfort of you and your home. There will be no reasonable explanation, no closure, nothing. Very understandable that you still feel love for him, OP. You've been together for a long time, but he's not worthy of that love. Believe me, there are much more deserving cases out there. You are still young. Try to get your endometriosis sorted out. You've got decades and decades of life ahead of you. Plenty of time for love and adventure. And without Wonder Boy. Result. Look forward, OP. That is where your future and your happiness is. You can do this. Good luck. Another comment coming from Kitty Kitty Muffin Pile. Stop thinking the best of your husband when he has shown you the worst. You're still giving him the benefit of the doubt and signing his praises. He is a crab bag. Why can you not see that? And no, he's not leaving you for a sure thing. This relationship is already crumbling. OP's response. Kitty Kitty Muffin Pile, great name. It's so hard to stop loving someone if you truly and deeply love them, even when they do terrible things. But yes, you're right, he is a crap bag, and I really do appreciate other people after reading my story reminding me of that. It's easy to get caught up in the happy memories of who I thought he still was, and forget that he is a totally different, terrible person now.